You need to have a FIRE goal to work towards. And that's because a goal without a plan is just a dream. That's why I built the perfect financial independence plan just for you. Hello everyone, my name is Zach, and welcome to On Cashflow, where I help you become a master of your own cash flow. Now let's get started. In order to create this financial independence plan just for you, I had to try to make it as broadly applicable as possible. And so I'm going to be running a scenario here that I think can apply to most people, or that you can just make some minor adjustments to it and then it will apply to you. I looked up from the census median household income, and it happened to be $70,784 of gross income. So I went ahead and just rounded that up to $71,000. And then I looked up how much the average household pays in income tax. So I looked at the bottom 50% and the top 25%, and it happened to be 14.6% and 3.5%. So I added those together, divided by 2 to find the average. So that happened to be 9.05%. And then I went ahead and just rounded that up to 10%. So that is how much income taxes are going to be taken away from that gross income. $71,000 of gross household income minus $7,100 of average income taxes. And that left us with $63,900 of net income for the entire year. And now let's get to the computer and create your financial independence plan. We are going to be using FI Calc.app in order to create the perfect financial independence plan for you. Let's go ahead and look at the configuration right here on the left-hand side. So for our example, we're going to be saying that you're going to be retiring at the age of 45. So not so bad, pretty early retirement. And we'll assume that you're going to have a 40-year length of retirement. So let's go ahead and change that. 40 years. And you are going to have a portfolio asset allocation right here of 70% equities and 30% bonds. And then, of course, we're not going to account for the cash on here. There we go. And you can see the actual fees that they have on there are pretty standard for index funds. So pretty low fees. That's what we like to see. Go ahead and save that. And as far as your withdrawal strategy goes, which is the next part here, we're going to have a constant dollar withdrawal strategy, which is what the 4% rule is, where you start with a certain number, and then you constantly withdraw that same amount, adjusted upwards for inflation. So in this case, we use the average numbers based on the census of 2021 for the household income, and we came to about $50,000 per year. So that's what we're going to put for the goal, $50,000. And then, like I said right here, this little tab is going to adjust for inflation. So it's going to use the average of the CPI for historical data, and it's going to adjust upwards for inflation. So you can see right here, the success rate is not so good yet, but that's just because we haven't changed this initial portfolio value yet. So let's also account for one more thing, and that is Social Security. So it's probably likely that Social Security is going to stay. Is it going to be as much as it is today? I don't know. But let's go ahead and try to account for that. So under the additional income tab, we're going to open that up, and we're going to add some additional income. And you can name it what you want. So we'll just name it Social Security. All right. And then let's go ahead and account for a relatively small amount. So I believe I've looked it up in the past, and the average amount was about $1,500 per month. Let's go ahead and account for about $20,000 per year in today's dollars. Very small amount. And then Social Security also adjusts upward for inflation, so we can go ahead and check that. And then we need to put when it's going to start. So we said that the person is going to be retiring at 45 on average, and the full retirement age right now is currently 67 for most people. And so that is going to be 27 years after they retire. So we'll go ahead and put 27 here. And the income is going to repeat indefinitely, okay? So you're going to get that for the rest of your life. Or, well, as we said, a 40-year retirement period. So go ahead and add that in there. All right, and then you also have additional withdrawals on here. That's in case like you need to make any kind of one-time additional withdrawals. Like if you're accounting for, let's say, you're going to donate a large amount to charity, or you're going to pay for your grandchild's tuition or something like that. So right now we're going to go ahead and leave that out. All right, and then the next one is historical data, which is what we're going to be using. And you can put all available historical data, which is what I'm going to keep, or you can actually adjust the dates. You can see it already has all the way up to 2022, and it goes back as far as 1926, which means it's going to include the Great Depression. which is kind of what we want to do. We want to include the worst case scenario. So we can go ahead and leave that. So now you can see with no additional changes, the success rate that we're currently at is barely about 70%, which I think no one wants to have a success rate that low, right? One way you can increase that success rate is by hitting the like button on this video. Okay, not really, but seriously, if you're enjoying this video so far, please make sure you like it, give it a thumbs up. It really does help me out, and I would really appreciate that. But how we are going to increase this success rate is we're going to have to adjust the initial portfolio value. So by default, it leaves $1 million in there. That is the starting value that FI Calc automatically has in there. But if we're going to be spending $50,000 per year, that means we're probably going to need a higher initial portfolio value. You're going to probably need to retire with more than $1 million in investments. The popular 4% rule is a good way to see how much we think we're going to need for an initial portfolio value. With $1 million of an initial portfolio value, that would be $40,000 per year. But we're trying to account for $50,000 per year as our starting value. So we need to take $50,000 times 25, and that would be $1.25 million. So that would be applying the 4% rule to our success rate. And let's see what happens when we do that. So all we need to do is change these two numbers right here, 25, and that's $1.25 million. And you can see our success rate jumps up to almost 93%. And let's go ahead and scroll down and look at some of these numbers here. So they have the portfolio at the end of your retirement, which is at the end of 40 years. The median, which is half of all, was less. Half of all portfolios were more. It's $2.5 million of your ending portfolio value. The average, we take all of them and divide it by the same number, was higher at 3.6 million, there was a standard deviation of 3.5 million as well. So the largest possible portfolio based on historical data was 16 million. The smallest, of course, was 0. That means you ran out of money. And the number of $0 portfolios was 8, so 7.14%. So let's go ahead and look down here. You can see with your spending, the median was $50,000 because that's what we started with. The average was $49,000, and you had a standard deviation of $3,700 per year. Let's go ahead and look at these simulations by year. So you can see that depending on which year you started, you have different results. So the red ones are the portfolio ran out of money. So if you started in the 1960s, most of the 1960s, then you had a pretty bad time. The next color that you want to look at is the orange one, which is the final portfolio value is less than 35% of the initial portfolio. You didn't run out of money in that scenario, but you ended up with not very much left over at the end of that scenario. So that might be too risky, so you might not want to have too many of those either. So you can see, again, 1962, 1972, 37, early 1900s when this all happened. And then finally, you want to look at the blue ones. These are great years to retire historically because your final portfolio value was more than 3 times what you started with. So you ended up with 3 times more money, like over 3 times more money than what you started with if you retired in these years. And you can see there's actually quite a few, many of those blue ones on there. And then the other ones that have no color, which are like light gray, those are pretty much ones that didn't meet those other 3 requirements. So those are like pretty decent years to retire. Now let's go back up here and see our success rate, 92%. And it is like a yellow color. We usually want that to be a little more than 92% because you probably don't want a 10% chance of running out of money. You probably don't want a significant chance of almost running out of money either. That's what I think most people want, to actually have some money to leave to charity or some money to leave to their grandchildren, their children, or something like that. So we want to get the success rate up. Now, the amount of success rate that is applicable to you is going to depend. But the way that we can do this with all the inputs that we put in now, assuming we keep the same portfolio asset allocation, assuming we have the same social security numbers, and assuming we still want to spend $50,000 per year in today's dollars, adjusted for inflation, what we have to change is the initial portfolio value. So how much do you need to save until you can reach a certain success rate? For this scenario, I'm going to go ahead and say that a 95% success rate is good enough. So 95%, that's what we're going for. So let's see what kind of changes we need to make. So I'm just going to go up in very small increments. So let's, instead of 1.25 million, let's look at 1.3 million. Just that relatively small amount of increase already got us up to 96.43%. So we already have a pretty high success rate with just a small difference in the initial portfolio value changing. This, I think, is a pretty good financial independence plan for most of us out there. A 40-year retirement, $1.3 million that we start our retirement with, 70% equities, that's stocks, and 30% bonds, where we rebalance that annually. We are using a constant dollar strategy where we start with a certain amount that we withdraw and then we adjust upwards for inflation, and it is at $50,000 per year. And then we can expect about $20,000 of Social Security at age 67 to be adjusted for inflation every year thereafter. Now this leads me to the big question here. I want to know from you in the comments below. For your financial independence plan, if you have one already, are you using these kinds of calculators? Are you using financial independence calculators in order to actually use real life data to make out your plan for early retirement? Please let me know in the comments below. I'm really curious to hear what you have to say. And one other thing that I do want to leave you with is when it comes to achieving financial independence, your investments are pretty much the most important thing for you being able to retire early. And that's why you need to have a good investment platform of where you hold your investments. Me personally, I actually made a pretty big switch a few years ago to M1 Finance. And I have a full video on why I made the switch to M1 Finance that I want you to check out right now. Okay, it's going to pop up on the screen right after I get off the screen. Thank you so much for watching this video. I'm Zach from uncashflow.com, and I hope to see you next time.